Welcome to the Scene Snobs Podcast.
Welcome to the Scene Snobs Podcast, our very special edition of Horror Conversations. And before we get started, I bring on my special guest co-hosts and my co-host, who I did not know was going to be here. I just want to put a very special thank you out to Jay McPhail, who made this very awesome custom The Scene Snobs light up sign for me, and he sent it over, and I truly appreciate it. Jay was actually at Carolina Fear Fest. That's why I want to definitely highlight it on the show. He gave us a couple of gifts, and he sent this and had it made over, and it's very cool. Thank you so much, Jay. But without further ado, let's bring on my co-host, Destiny, and you know him well, Dan the Man. What's going on, guys? How are you?
Distracted.
Very. I mean, I was too, for sure. Like I was all over the place. Like this was so last minute. So Dan literally got a message from me at like 6:39.
Hey, I'm always prepared, man. It's like Boy Scout time.
You're a guy who I will always host something with.
Love it. Especially when it's horror, man. I got my Joe Bob. I got some new stuff. You can't see it. Oh man. But I have new stuff. This is all old stuff back there, but I have new stuff and love it. Love being here. Love talking horror.
Don't look at my mess.
Dude, and this is it. This is our horror podcast. And I have a special announcement with it, guys. So this has always been a part of the Scene Snobs podcast. And this is always going to be presented by the Scene Snobs and Carolina Fear Fest. But I am going to roll Horror Conversations into its own show. It's going to be its own podcast. We're still going to do it once a month for now, and we're going to continue on. And as long as Destiny will show up and whoever else wants to show continues, it will be a podcast. And
I didn't know I was signed up for this, but let's do it.
You told me you wanted to be a co-host.
Yes, and I also specifically told you I wanted to do a show about how Doctor Who is horror. Prove me wrong.
I'm not going to prove you wrong. There's definitely horror.
I know you're not going to, but everybody else has to try to prove us wrong. That's the fun part.
I don't think anybody.
They're going to be wrong, and we're going to be right.
Doctor Who is definitely a horror. Doctor Horror.
Doctor Horror. Exactly. Exactly correct.
Doctor Horrible. Please tell me you've seen that, Dan.
I have no.
Oh my God! You need to watch that.
The last Doctor Who I watched was from the 70s ? So it's old.
That's nothing wrong with that. That's okay.
That's all I saw when it was on the BBC. Is it still on the BBC? I don't know. So
you should watch the new ones because they're
Eccleston
amazing.
on. You got to do it. Eccleston on.
Oh, yeah,
you got to see Matt Smith. You got to see David Tennant. David Tennant's coming back. Okay, this is not what this episode's about. I'm sorry.
That's true. We can have a horror conversations that talks about Doctor Who. Its 60th anniversary is coming up in November. Just saying. I'm okay with it. It's our show. We can do whatever we want.
It's true.
You know? And Tripp says Weeping Angels, case closed. That's true.
That's very correct.
100% horror. And AJ, the Dadpool's here. What's going on, AJ?
Dadpool, what's up, buddy?
So before we get into our full topic for tonight and talk some horror, I do want to talk about the convention in the horror con-versations. And Dan was actually there this year. He was at Carolina Fear Fest 2022.
I remember you were helpful. I don't remember why you were helpful, but I remember that you were helpful.
I try to be helpful wherever I can.
Take that as a huge compliment.
I don't remember what happened the entire weekend.
Three people she's probably said that to. And I know I'm not one of them.
I filled in at the party for Mick.
That's right. Yes. And you did judging for the costume contest.
And you everybody organized and judged the costume contest, and it went
way
really
too
well.
Organized for me. I was unprepared. I was like,
yeah, you guys, you really went all at it.
Who wins?
It was fun.
So many tallies and notes.
There were some great costumes there. I thought it was a blast, and if you guys do it next year, I'm really pumped to. I'll judge again. I don't mind. So.
We're gonna mix it up a little. We're gonna switch it up. It's not gonna be the same kind of party, but it's gonna be a party, and I'm pretty psyched for it. We have two major ideas, and I can't tell you about them, but like, if I get to wear a ball gown and my vampire fangs, I'm gonna be real happy.
Well, there's a little
masquerade.
I have such a cool idea for a costume to host.
Uh-huh.
I do. I love masquerades.
As cool as 90. What is it called? VJ?
Yeah, it's gonna be better.
VJ
I'll go all out. I love masquerades.
I loved your vintage VJ devil concept. I really like that. I feel like it should be a series on your TikTok.
Oh my god.
You're
Damn,
welcome.
what do you think? God, I can get in that character.
Love it.
You might already be that character.
Just like that douchebag that pops up and starts talking like about whatever.
You can just take like videos of trailers from the official source and then stitch them and just talk over them the whole time.
That should be like my Stephen Colbert character. You know how like the Daily Show had that like Republican character that was so outlandish? But like this is going to be my Fox News on the Scene Snobs type character. And just like completely out there, like hates the Barbie movie for whatever reason. Hates Oppenheimer because the bomb didn't get there quick enough. You know,
we're not talking about the Barbie movie.
Why?
We're not talking about it because I have a lot to say and it will completely take over this entire episode and we have other things to talk about.
That's true. I did write out a whole script, but I kind of want to know what you have to say about the Barbie.
You should bring her on to review it when the strike's lifted, man.
You should.
Ooh,
you should. You absolutely should because I have a lot to say about that movie.
I do like
and so
that.
does Angie, and she'll come on too.
Ooh, I like that.
We went to see it together at the Alamo.
I want to see it though.
She was wondering why you hadn't reviewed it yet. That's why you haven't seen it yet.
No reviews of
Fair.
New movies that are struck. Like all the studios that are struck right now, I'm staying out of it. And that's a personal preference, everybody. I'm doing it for myself because I have friends who are in the union. It was funny because somebody I said that and I put the video out on TikTok and somebody wrote, they wrote like the most scathing comment about it, about how much of a loser I am for it and not doing it. And I was just like, but this is a person, like in my mind, I got upset for a second. I'm like, wait, this is a personal preference. You didn't even pay attention to it. And then I went to his thing and it was like, he's like a semi-professional auto race driver. And
so he doesn't even know anything about the industry. Okay, buddy.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, cool, man. Like, whatever. I was like, I was half of me was like, I kind of want to invite him on and talk about auto racing.
That's it. I love talking to people that disagree with me. That's my favorite, man.
Yeah,
I know you do. I know you do. I know you do. Because there are sometimes Dan will say things about certain movies, and like it's like he'll text me, and I'm like, my head is just like still trying to catch up at certain things that he says, and I'm like,
some of the stuff's on purpose too. Just because
I know, and that's why I love you, and that's like I can say without a doubt that's how I prove my friendships are real. Is like if I can read it and be like, even if you're not fucking with me at any given time, it's like, yeah, no, I get what's happening. Yeah, I get what's happening here, and he means it, but at the same time, it's like, fine, I still respect him enough to let it go.
The best kind of conversations come out of disagreement, not agreement. So
I agree, but that Jaws agreement, dude, the fact that you said that about Jaws then had the audacity.
Speaking of horror, I mean, like, I'll call into question whether Jaws is a horror movie. How about that? Like,
I was just going to ask that question, actually. Is it?
I think it definitely should. I think it should definitely be put under horror, but by today's standards,
no,
probably not.
I think that's what the difference is. I think it was when it came out.
I think, but for what it did, it opened doors for us to get to today's standards of horror.
Especially with practical effects. Wasn't it like a milestone achievement in practical effects?
Until
animatronics.
Yeah.
And especially editing in horror. Yeah. Because to not show a lot of the hidden villain, hidden in the shadows and things like that comes from that idea of like, oh, we don't have to show the villain. Like, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre is in your face.
Oh, yeah.
That dude's like, okay, he's not there. Then he's there and he hits you in the mallet and then pulls you in the back.
Hits you in the mallet.
Who is the hero? So in Jaws, who's the actual hero?
I would say Brody.
Brody, it's got to be Chief Brody.
Yeah.
It has been so long since I've seen that movie.
I love that Mrs. Shake and I just agree on things. And
she loves Jaws so much. I actually at the con I bought the entire series of Jaws prints so the guy who did Frankie for the shirt, he had a whole like Jaws sequence I bought from him, and it was really nice. I can't remember his name, unfortunately. I should give him a shout out.
Very cool. What was his name? That's the one who did the artwork for you guys.
Wes Flannery.
Yep.
He's amazing. He's an oil painter. Yes, he's extremely talented. I keep meaning to message him and see if he's willing to do a painting challenge with me. We can call it Wes and Des. Because he paints oils. I paint acrylics. So like I kind of want to see what would happen if we tried to paint the same thing at the same time.
And I paint the town red.
I don't have that much blood on store, but I can get some more.
That was perfect for this show. But at the same time, like just the dry no laughter was perfect too. Let's just drive past that one.
I did laugh. It just sounds weird because my throat hurts. It's fine.
What is the difference then between like, so if Brody's the hero of Jaws, he's the hero. What's the difference between horror movie heroes and other protagonists or heroes in other genres?
That was the question I was going to ask. Do horror movies even have heroes? Because so often we think of hero as the person that saves someone, but so often in horror movies they have to kill someone to save someone. So are they even really a hero?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I was so confused when you brought the topic up. I was like,
see, that's why I brought it up though, because it's so divisive, and you can talk about it like this because you're right. Like, what is a hero? Like, what are the traits of a hero? Like, because if you go by that route, is Luke Skywalker a hero? You know, he kills people. Like, and it's arguable that he is written and holds the traits of a true hero in cinema. So to translate that or correlate that to horror movies, like, we have already as a society agreed that like killing to survive
is okay.
So it's morally we can accept that as okay.
Or to save someone who needs saving.
Yeah. And in fact, that's like, I think in a lot of like religions and things like that, especially in Christianity, that's like a sacrifice. Like, you are, not even if you're not sacrificing yourself, but like that's like a gateway to heaven right there. You know, like you have now stopped somebody else from dying. You saved somebody's life, you know, and mortal danger. So, you know, it really can be anybody. Like, because we always have our protagonists, the person who's going to go through it, and we have our final girls who are heroes throughout. And of course, but that counts for, in the grand scheme of horror overall, a small percentage. Because let's think about it, final girls haven't always been there. It evolved into that, and it's even evolved out of that, in my opinion.
Yeah,
you know, in a lot of ways, for the better.
I think the archetype of a hero matters a lot in terms of it. And so if you're going to apply it to horror, any horror that has a hero, I think must follow that archetypal journey where they are changed. That's why Wes Craven is such a genius. And granted, he was a college lit professor before he was a director. If you look at how he follows the archetypal hero's journey, as you know, as outlined, like, I mean, this is like historic, right? If you follow Heather Langenkamp, you follow her character in Nightmare on Elm Street, it actually follows what you would call the archetypal hero's journey. Like, she starts out, she gets assistance, she comes out changed on the other side and realizing that she can turn her back on the things that threaten her. Like, that's an example of an archetypal horror hero. But I don't necessarily, I think Desi might be right about something here. Like, not every horror movie has that. So I think the reality is that heroes in horror movies might depend on whether or not they prescribe to specific archetypal story arcs.
I think you're right about the hero's journey. And I'm not necessarily saying not all horror movies have heroes. I just think that horror movies tend to question what a hero actually is.
Mm-hmm. And like, fall anti-hero more often.
Exactly.
I would also argue that this genre in particular, or especially even, has helped to create a new look for heroes in many ways, because we do see, like, again, like, let's take the Final Girl. For a long time, the archetype of a hero was this, and now you take the hero's journey. The Final Girl's journey through that is very similar to that, format. But you come back, you take out of it, and you take out of that, and when what gets put into the horror genre of putting this Final Girl with what she's going through, it's a very different type of hero than what we're used to seeing.
For sure. And even I would say that postmodern horror, like A25 stuff, even calls into question, like, should there be a hero in the first place? I think about, my brother loves, what's the Midsommar? That doesn't have a hero. If anything, it has like a culture is a hero. I don't know. Like, it's kind of hard.
That whole movie is survival.
Yeah. Like
survival against other humans, basically.
So it calls
that
into
within
question.
itself would turn a society that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off then. I do want to hear what you have to say, but I want to see what you have to say to this. And that's why that's why I kind of jumped in real fast. Would you consider the society in the movie the hero? Because at the end, the one who was truly suffering was the one who was saved. So I want to just see what you think with what you were going to say.
I think their culture is the hero of the film, and I think if you like the movie and you like the message, because it is postmodernism. So now we're talking about audience reception theory. Whether you're talking reader response or audience reception theory, audience reception is in terms of film. It matters how people absorb it, right? I watched that movie and I basically am like, I have no one to root for. I have no hero in this movie. My brother watches it and he's cheering for Florence Pugh's character all the way to the end to join their society because she doesn't clearly fit in terms of her emotional response and like in any other culture.
Yeah.
But from my thing, when she's at the end and she's in that crown and that giant like thing, I'm like, man, I am terrified for her. Like, yeah. I'm scared for her. So it just depends on it. Like, sticking with postmodern and post-structuralism, it depends on like audience response theory. I don't think there's a hero in that movie because I'm terrified of that culture. My brother thinks there is because their culture should be like respected and held up. And I'm like, man, they'd flay people and like I had just drug people without their consent. Like,
and that's a beautiful look at the inside look of a cult.
See,
I agree.
Yeah,
Definitely. I don't super like. I've seen that movie twice, but I don't remember a lot of specific details about what happens. Florence Pugh, that's her name, right? The actress.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I saw her as the hero and the society as the villain, and she was trying to survive the villain, and she didn't succeed necessarily, but she definitely survived. So like she won, but like the story's not over. Like they kind of, it felt like they set it up for a sequel. I don't know if they did or not, or if they're planning on making one, but like I definitely saw her as the hero in that movie.
I'm glad you brought that up, which leads me to my next question. Even if the hero loses, and now I know in certain aspects, especially if it's very plain in sight, but in a situation like this, even if the hero loses, are they still the hero?
Think about like Final Destination.
Something
or are
like
they
that.
A martyr?
Or is death the hero? The death in Final Destination is just trying to correct what was supposed to happen. It's a natural plan.
The disembodied hero. Yeah.
It's not supposed to be revenge or anything like that. It's just correcting what was the course that was, taken, or what was taken off course, So something like that, like, you got to start questioning, like, what's the hero of it? Like, for me, it's so funny how in depth now these questions are getting, Destiny, because when I first thought about this, I'm like, like Creighton Duke was a hero.
I know. I was like, I don't necessarily agree, but I also don't know, like, I don't remember enough about these specific characters in this specific movies. And I was like, I'll watch a few and try to get a vibe. And I did. I watched a couple horror movies this week, but like,
nice.
I couldn't, I don't know, man. Like
that was me though, trying to tie the fact that Stephen Williams was at Carolina Fear Fest.
Okay, well, I can do that. All right, Stephen Williams was in Supernatural, and in Supernatural, there is a character that is the Fates who is trying to correct the issue of the Titanic not sinking which brings it back to your previous point. You're welcome.
True. Well, I mean, listen, we have plenty of heroes in Supernatural, great TV show.
I can bring anything to Supernatural.
That's true. I knew you would too.
One thing we might want to do before we get on the train of like modern, because the whole point is to turn everything on its head in the first place, is talk about like the origins.
Yeah, I actually did want to talk about classics, so I'm glad you brought this up. Please go ahead.
You know, if you go basically pre 1960s and stuff, everything is highly archetypal and follows like patterns. I just noted real quick, like the first one I came to mind was Van Helsing from Dracula, is very clearly a hero, and it's good guy, bad guy, right? That's that simple classic architecture of a story, very much
more defined.
Yeah, highly defined, highly just in their own lane, and like that was the first one. And so like if you're going to define it, starting at the beginning in terms of this, like especially like classic Hollywood, Mick, you know this, like the monster had to die. You could not have the monster survive the film. So the hero had to win. So you had a very clearly defined role to play. But the one that I think might spin it on its head, and I'm curious to see what you guys think. Have either of you seen The Silent Phantom of the Opera?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a long time.
Oh, it's so good. And
I was super obsessed for a while.
So I love the Phantom. I think his character is basically an anti-hero, personally.
And surprisingly multifaceted.
Yeah, very complex, right?
Yeah.
But at the very end of the film, the mob is chasing him because the monster has to die.
Yeah.
And he reaches into his jacket, and the whole mob stops because they're like, oh no, what's he going to do? And he pulls his fist out, right? And the whole thing freezes, and like then it has a title card. It's like, oh, what does he have? And then he goes like this. And it's nothing. And then they swarm him, and he just laughs as they kill him. And I was like, that to me is awesome. And it's something that early on should be called into it. Like, if you're going to define a hero, it really does depend on who the person is. Because, like, I think that's heroic. Like, bearing down on him, they're going to kill him, and he has one last moment of triumph. I guess that's different. Hero versus heroic.
He was able to screw them, and actually, I'm glad you said that, because that was my next point of what I was going to ask. I'm so sorry, Destiny. I know I am taking over, and I won't. You know what? I'm going to shut up and listen. I want to listen. I'm going to learn from Barbie to this week.
A hero is a character, and heroic is a moment or a scene. That's all I was going to say.
Good. That's great. Good working definition. Yeah, I like it.
Yes, as a definition, but also it can be a concept. Heroic
versus heroic. Or hero can be a concept.
Heroic or hero. When you are writing characters, you have to also look at it. So, and this is the question I was going to ask about Dracula. Now, we can all say that Van Helsing is heroic. He is a guy who already knows and is established who he is. This is what he does. You're right. True. He's not heroic to the vampires. Depends on the perception. But this is what he does. So is he, in fact, heroic, or is this what he does? You know, it's just, that's more of a question, philosophical question we can ask each other. Is Jonathan Harker the real hero of Dracula? And it doesn't have to be the Bela Lugosi version or whatever.
Yeah, whichever. Yeah,
we can ask whatever version, but is Jonathan Harker the real hero? Because Jonathan Harker picks up the fight. There's a defense of love. There's so like according
to my wife, they're all punks, and the only hero is Dracula.
Agree. That one. I agree.
That's it. Like seriously,
bring her next year.
She had never seen the new one, Bram Stoker's Dracula. You know, who's in it, Mick? You got to remind me the actors, man. I can't. Gary Oldman, is he? Yeah,
the new one, the one that came out 31 years ago.
Yeah, well, new. Oh, yeah, not Dracula 2000, not Dracula 2000, but like Bram Stoker's.
Wait, you mean Dracula 2000, which came out 23 years ago?
How do you know these things off the top of your head?
It's just called Dracula 2000.
Oh, it actually came out in the gotcha.
Well, so Bram Stoker with Keanu Reeves and Gary Oldman.
But there was a Dracula TV series that came out only like 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, oh boy.
So we get to the end of the movie, and she's mad because they wouldn't just leave Winona Ryder and Dracula alone. And I was like, she's under a spell. She's like, it doesn't matter. No, she's fine. I was like, No, she's under so like according to my wife, Dracula should have just been left alone to his own business so he could be in love with Winona Ryder.
That's true. Mr. Shake does say Dracula equals hero. Van Helsing.
There you go. There it is. I want to meet your wife.
I didn't even know she said that.
You should bring her to the con, please.
What's up, Radar? How you doing, Jason?
Hi, Radar.
And what's up, Sturdy? How you guys doing? Thanks for joining in. All right. Well, we're really getting into the deep-rooted issues of hero, and I do want to talk about.
So deep right now.
You were like, I don't know if we're going to talk about anything. You have so much to say, and I love it.
Yes, because I've been questioning the idea of heroes in horror movies for like a week. Where's your script, by the way? Where did you even send that?
I sent it to your email.
Girl, I check my email.
Would you think I sent it by Pony Express?
Discord, which gives me notifications. Email doesn't give me notifications. Nobody wants emails.
Send you a Word document on Discord. Can you send a Word document?
Word document? Oh my god!
PDF. You can send it a PDF on Discord. I think
we found the villain. It's
PDF,
Mick,
but I just didn't make it a PDF yet.
The villain is Mick.
The real villain in the story.
Using Microsoft products? Come on, man.
I was writing the thing up until a half hour ago.
So
okay.
I think that like generally the next honest question has to be, we talked about like some kind of like top end heroes, right?
Yeah.
We're so off track from this document.
Who do you think is the most underappreciated hero?
Oh,
or heroine? I mean, I guess we should
list here then.
Yeah, like I'm using hero as a gender neutral term, not as like a gendered term. So
yeah, because they had to go and make the girl version of like a drug that people get addicted to.
Heroin.
Thanks, guys. Now we can't say it like ever.
Well,
so who would you say is the most underappreciated Destiny?
Okay, fine, go with her first.
Of course, I
passed to Mick because honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I always get the answer wrong because I like your wife switch it from what it's supposed to be. I vote for the people that are being attacked, not the people that are trying to save lives. Because usually the people that are being attacked have dogs, and dogs are better than people. So like,
but it's an opinion, and we love it, and you're allowed to have it.
You'd have to ask me about a specific movie. You can't be so broad.
Okay, because I have a list. How about I start it off, and we'll continue off of that.
Go ahead, Mick. Yeah.
And then you can tell me when I'm wrong. And what you love to do. And
I love to regret things.
You love to tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, that's
okay, so 3 things I wanted to point out. Well, one thing I definitely wanted to point out is because when I was doing my research on like unsung and underappreciated heroes in horror movies, is Nancy Thomas, to me, was always an underappreciated horror hero until like I would say 10 years ago.
Thompson?
Really?
Yeah.
Nancy
I would say
Thompson?
Yeah, Nancy Thompson from I said Thomas, sorry, I meant Thompson.
Yeah, Nightmare. Got you.
Nightmare on Elm Street. So the reason I say that is because if you think about up until about 10, maybe 15 years ago, those movies were always loved. But Nancy didn't get the love that I think she's getting now. And I think a lot of this comes from, and it ties back into who produces this whole thing, is the fact that once we started getting horror actors from the past doing more cons and people started becoming more familiar with them, it generated a lot of like love for those characters. And I think Nancy Thompson falls into that. And it's well deserved.
I'm going to say something that I hate.
Dokken is awesome.
I'm going to throw you and my wife a bone, Mick.
Oh, God. Sidney Prescott?
I think that Scream was the gateway to make horror mainstream. And prior to Scream, it wasn't a mainstream focal point. And I really I think that Scream allowed some of the things from the 70s and 80s in horror to become, because immediately, look at that 1996 Scream, right? And then what happens right away in the 2000s? Everything gets remade.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate admitting it, but Scream brought a lot of the things that I loved to the forefront. And I was those guys in Scream, right? The rules, this is how you survive a horror movie. And these are the, who's the character who dies in the second one that
Randy.
I was Randy. I was the nerd at the record store. I was the nerd at the movie store. Like, I think Scream allowed heroes in horror who weren't classic icons to come to the forefront. And it helped. Like, Sidney Prescott, I mean, really, is there a big difference between Sidney Prescott and Nancy Thompson? So I think Sidney Prescott allowed... Nancy Thompson walked so Sidney Prescott could run, and then Nancy Thompson could leapfrog her and be a much better hero. There, I got it in. I had to get it in.
Okay. I think Nancy Thompson is a better final girl than Sidney Prescott. I do, and the reason I think she's underappreciated, especially, is that, you know, look at how many sequels Laurie got, Jamie Lee got. Look at how many sequels Sydney got, and then you look at Heather Langenkamp, and it's like you got two, well, three technically. You know, yeah, I know. But and you didn't even get to play Nancy in one of them. You know, you got to play yourself.
You got to play yourself.
Yeah. So I like Nancy Thompson is a great character, and I think it was underappreciated for so long. And now that she's back, you're right. I think it did bring it into the mainstream. And if anything, love for horror and the people who loved horror movies, that was always there. But bringing it into the mainstream was kind of sparked by Scream. Of course, we've had this talk, yeah, and then that continued.
Do you think it's because it was such a comedic enterprise? Like, the whole Scream franchise is so comedy based that's why it became so mainstream? Because it was cross genre.
It was just a different movie. Yeah, I hate to say this because it makes me sound
I didn't see that in theaters. I was not I was not aware of what was in movie theaters when that movie came out. So, like, I can't relate to it a little bit.
So Dan and I are only a year apart. So, and I'm not going to ask you your age. I'm
good. You shouldn't, because it's immortal.
But we're about 10 years old. We're at least 10 years older than you. And the reason I say that, and that is not an age shame thing, that is, we were in high school. I didn't know what a
VJ was.
That is pretty funny.
Because I thought it was something very different than what you told me it was.
So different when I was
she thought it was like a VD. I think.
Yeah, she thought it was like a sexual thing. It was so funny when I was like, "Yeah, I could be an MTV VJ. What is that?"
I was like, "Oh my God." I'm sorry, what? I was picturing pink pants and dancing and like little, you know, the movement with the pants.
It was.
Who was that? Janelle Monáe? Yeah, that was Janelle Monáe.
It was so funny.
That's what I was picturing.
Okay,
dude.
I still vote for that for next time.
But like my like the way Stu dressed in that movie, that's how I dressed. That's like that was my style.
I can pull my closet out right now and it looks the same. So
yeah, it never really changes. So
wait, Zubaz pants? Are we talking about Zubaz pants right now?
No, we're talking about Stu from Scream.
Like, I had like corduroy
shirts,
pants,
band shirts, geek shirts. Like,
I didn't really do Janko, but like I did have the baggy.
Oh my God, that's Matthew Lillard. I love that guy. See, here's another part of the problem with me having these conversations is I do not remember character names. I am terrible at names, people's names. I remembered you as Master Shake, but I did not remember your real name. I remembered your username, but not your real name. And I don't know what's wrong with me.
I'm much more well known as three people at the con knew who I was, and I was like,
I had people walk up to me and knew who I was. That was really weird. I was like, ugh.
Listen, the Scene Snobs provides
apparently
attention to all good people.
That's how my literal
waiting at my hotel though, Mick. I waited out in front and there was no limo. I was limo to the green room.
Oh yeah, no, I took it. Sorry. Anyway, I'm terrible with character names, so I have to look up every character you guys mentioned so I can see their face and I remember who they are, because I can't remember their name or who played them. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sorry, it takes me a minute. It takes me a minute to get on track because of that.
That's fine. I love that, and I'll keep doing that to you.
Great, thanks. I remember Sidney Prescott.
Like you may not remember though, because it was in 1996 that movie came out. So we were what, Dan? Like 14?
I was 13. Like, yeah, I saw it in the theater.
So if you were 15, I was 16. So Jesus, like I remember how much of a downfall horror movies were.
Oh, dude, people had pronounced the death.
Yeah, genre is dead,
and it came in conjunction with several movies as far as my memory goes. Halloween. Oh, which one was it? That was like 1996.
Six.
Okay, so Halloween, and then Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare.
Yep. Well, that came out in 91.
And that was 91.
Freddy's Dead was 91. Halloween 6 came out in 94.
And do you remember how bad Child's Play 3 did? The one where like people had pronounced the death. It was the death of horror, and then Scream came out, and it like
even good horror movies that came out in the 90s, like People Under the Stairs or Candyman, things like that. Like they had to be word of mouth.
Yeah.
Videotape, like go to the video store.
Thank you, Family Video, for having things that I wanted to see, because
and now for horror fans like us, like three of us, all that stuff from like before Scream, from like maybe like 89, 90, where it really started to kind of come down until like Scream came out. We love it because we're horror fans.
Yep.
But it killed in the mainstream. Like it was dying. Like nobody studios didn't really want to do anything anymore.
Cult
like
classics.
It really had to become that because nobody wanted to see anything. Like I said, most of it became word of mouth. You know, Candyman, I don't even know if that did that well. It might have done well, but it just didn't. It was out real quick. And that, to me, is probably one of the best. That In the Mouth of Madness, things like that. Like two of the best.
In the Mouth of Madness is so good.
I need to go back and watch some of the old stuff again.
In the Mouth of Madness is one of the best Lovecraftian horror movies ever made, and it just went unnoticed. Another good one, and it's by Burton. Lord of Illusions was the same time period.
Yeah.
And I loved that movie. I loved that movie as an 11-year-old.
That one I've never heard of.
Lord of Illusions, great. Yeah, it like had a great cast and wonderful effects. Like, So I mean, the other part, like, if you're gonna bring up Sidney Prescott, if you're gonna bring up Nancy Thompson, if you're gonna bring up Helen Lyle from Candyman, you're gonna bring up all these characters. What is the difference between a final girl and a hero? Then, if you're gonna distinguish the two, what is the difference between a final girl and a hero? And if they're not the same, how do you delineate that given a new movie in this current age?
My instinct is to say sexism, but I actually don't think that's the case. I honestly think, I was going to bring this up. I think that life is more complicated now than when some of those movies came out. So the hero and the villain and the hero has to win is not a concept we abide by anymore.
Okay.
And there's so much more like gray area over right and wrong and good and evil in movies in general, but especially in horror movies, in like the modern films. I've almost come to expect it. And I think that's why when you said heroes of horror, I was immediately like, there aren't any. Like, my first thought was like, that's stupid. There's not a single thing we can talk about. But then I thought about it more and realized where he was coming from. And I was like, okay, all right. And I think there's kind of like almost a timeline. Sorry, my throat's killing me. Almost a timeline of like from Dracula when the hero has to win to Midsommar, where who even is the hero, right? Like it almost like devolves over time, and that's kind of applicable to the human experience, really.
I love that. To me, I would almost argue that the final girl is actually even in movies is the epitome of what a hero is.
It's like the soup up. It's like not superhero, but the super hero. Like
because
honestly,
that journey all throughout is the evolution of change and everything that the final girl goes through to change. Whether they, I'm sorry, Des.
Go ahead.
Every change that the final girl goes through from beginning to end, whether they lose or not, is a heroic shift. And I think that is best represented in of what heroes are in movies in general. I know that's going to piss off a lot of like boys who don't want to agree with me, but whatever. I do think that is the case. Like, I think that we should be using final girls more when we're pointing out and talking about heroes in movies. And to Destiny's point of saying like the wins and the losses, almost It Follows. It's a perfect example of that. You don't beat the hero in the end. It lingers and lives with you. You just learn to live with it.
That's a great example, Nick. That's a great example.
I think the reason the final girl isn't the hero is because traditionally it's the survivor and not the hero of the story. But essentially it's the same thing. You're right. The journey's the same. They're still coming out different and changed at the end, like the hero is on the hero's journey. But for some reason, maybe it's sexism. Because they're the survivor and they're usually female, of course.
I think your reasoning...
And at some point topless. Because
your reasoning for being a hero has changed. So what was the biggest reason for the hero's journey? It's always been men. And men always have to be the hero. And they always have to hold heroic traits. And women never held heroic traits back in the day. So it always had to be survivor is the reason that a woman would become a hero.
And therefore the final girl.
It just kicks in. But the fact of the matter is, surviving is exactly what the same reason a man's doing it. I don't care what a movie says.
Can I jump a bullet point for us here, Mick?
Please. Yeah.
So in turning in it, like, I'm giving so much love right now to Wes Craven, and I don't care because he's my favorite horror director.
Go for it. He used a lot of psychology in his writing.
He broke the mold that he helped create when he wrote. So if you've seen Nightmare on Elm Street 2, the trope of the final girl is flipped on its head, and that was originally Wes Craven's idea. He wanted to have instead of this idea of Nancy, he wanted to have a male who how it was with a male. Now, his original script, it was really, really violent, and it was almost like Last House on the Left level. But in how it transformed, I love the fact
violent movie. I'm sorry, side note.
Well, like more so, like way more. Like if you've seen Last House on the Left, it's like that level. Like
it was like one of the first horror movies I ever saw, so that's kind of like my baseline. Anyway, continue.
Ooh.
Wait. Did you see the remake or the original? Because the original is horrifically violent.
There's a single moment.
I'll think about it.
Moment in the original one that I think might be a top 10 moment in horror that nobody talks about. I know this is off topic from what we're talking about, but the character's name is Kruger, and they have performed this horrific act to this woman, and afterwards he looks down at his hand, and there are 3 blades of grass on his hand, and he looks down and he like flicks the blades of grass off his hand as if like it's like, oh, what did I do? I'm so like, what just happened? I think it is such a like Wes Craven's brilliant anyway, but I think that is such an underappreciated moment in horror that like nobody talks about, like how these really horrific people still have this moment of like, oh, I have grass on my hand, and they're like flicking it off. Yeah, like
nature.
It goes over so well in my opinion. But anyway, like I think that Jesse from Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is your perfect example of the LGBTQ answer to the final girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think is the gayest horror movie ever made. But
that's Mark Patton.
It is.
Who was at Carolina Fear Fest 2 years ago and was delightful and a lovely person to meet. Just
have you seen the documentary Scream Queens that he's in?
Yeah,
it was very good.
Oh, okay,
yeah, he was promoting it at the con. It was quite good.
Oh, great! And early on, the guy who transformed horror multiple times in his career was already willing to flip that final girl trope on its head and play around with what it was and what it wasn't. And like, I think that has to go into that kind of conversation, like defining final girl versus hero, because very much so, the hero of that movie is his like. Are you going to call it like love interest? Because they're not in love. He's in love with Grady in that movie. He's in love with Grady for sure. And like, hit the girl, who does she? She looks like an actress. Mick, what actress does she look like?
She looks like a Streep. She looks like
Meryl
Meryl
Streep,
Streep's daughter.
That's why she was cast. Like, she's the hero of that movie. And
she saves the day.
Yeah, she saves it. He's the final girl.
In 2?
Like, 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
In part 2. And it's funny that you mentioned that too, because the symbolism even in that one, because why did slashers become so big? So like, one of the big things,
Lisa Weber, is that who you're talking about?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So like when we go back to the classic horror and look at like let's take, and we're not even talking about women in horror, but let's go back and talk about women in horror for a second in classic. And of course they were always, because it was a male driven industry, women were either the victims or they were just the eye candy is really what it came down to in the horror genre. Well, in most genres, but primarily in the horror genre. And they evolved into heroic with the times because women were becoming more outspoken, being able to talk. And no, hold on. I need you to be quiet while I'm talking.
Okay.
If that joke doesn't fit with exactly what I was just saying, come on.
I'm glad Destiny has a sense of humor.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
No, I'm shutting up. Please go. I was kidding. I was just kidding, please. Don't take a drink. Be quiet.
Maybe I don't want to talk right now.
Oh my God! Everybody listening.
He forgot what he was talking about.
No, I know what I'm saying. I'm waiting for you. I want to hear what you have to say.
I was saying I have a point after you. That's all I was saying. I wasn't interrupting.
No. Please go ahead.
I was gonna say we need to talk about the movie, The Final Girls, at some point.
Yes.
Oh, that's such a wonderful movie.
Great
I love
point.
that movie.
And that's like the conjunction of both things.
That'll fit in perfectly with where this is going, because I'm talking about more of the evolution. Then we get into the 60s, like the 50s and 60s, sexual revolution, where women are still more sexual eye candy and victims, but they're still becoming more. There's more strength to them being shown, and then of course we get into
they have a character.
They have a character, yes, but there is more. But it isn't. Let's be real; they're not writing the characters well. It isn't until we get into the 70s, more so the 80s, 90s, and such, that we get the stronger characters. We get the final girls who come in and do it. And look how it changed. It went from supernatural, which we could talk about religion and that impact on it. That's a completely different thing. But but we get into slashers. Why do we get into slashers? Because it's stabbing. It's a euphemism for rape, which is kind of how it's always been with vampires and werewolves and everything. But now we have slashers. My point to what you're saying with Grady is the fact that he had to watch Freddy, another man, enter Grady before him from behind.
Yeah, from behind.
That symbolism of it. Very
in one of the scenes in that movie, there's a board game called Probe in his closet.
Oh, really?
Is that an Easter egg?
I know way too much about that movie. It's
a great movie. I love that movie.
I love that movie, and it gets canned a little bit for no reason. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's not Freddy." When they made that movie, they didn't know what Freddy was yet.
Yeah. It was still being defined as a character.
Actually, that's more Freddy than the first one. I mean, still not what the Freddy we know. But that's arguably.
That second movie should be heralded a lot more than it is, and it advanced a lot of ideas in horror. And maybe it's a little heavy-handed in certain parts, but like, I don't know, man. The best part is they have a gym teacher getting whipped with a jump rope and actual balls thrown at him.
Marshall Bell, man. Love that actor.
And I forgot about that.
Is Robert Shea, so the producer, Robert Shea, always wanted to be in every Freddy movie. He's in a bar scene in that movie that is a gay bar, and everybody's in leather and assless chaps.
He's the bartender.
And Robert Shea had to go into a store with his 2 teen daughters to buy those leather get-ups. just a weird side note, like.
Yeah. And to kind of like even like continuing on and like talking about like the women's side of it and things like that, and like kind of pushing forward to where, to get to your point, Des, and like where we were going with it. It's happily we've pushed past the horror where now it's a more complex, like we see the female characters in horror have more complexity and they're more character driven, and there's a lot more to it. That's
Thank you, Deborah Hill.
And Midsommar, which we talked about earlier, is a really good example of that because she does have like a fleshed out character.
Yeah.
But the point I was going to make about the final girls is it's the kind of the point where the final girl, the survivor, becomes the hero. And I think that's kind of the first time we really see the final girl as the hero and not just the survivor. And that was 2015 that movie came out. I loved that movie.
It's a great movie.
And then there was Happy Death Day, right? Where she's the final girl, but she's also the hero.
Yeah.
So like I feel like it's going more that direction. I like seeing these characters that actually have a backstory and a personality to them. It doesn't matter the gender. It's just the fact that they're not just, oh no, there's a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like it's more evolved than that. And it's more complex than that.
Sure.
Sure.
So I kind of, since we're kind of coming towards the close of the show and such, and talking about Final Girls and kind of where we went from there and stuff like that.
I took it feminist.
I like it. I like it. Let's talk about some other heroes that we see outside of women, because we did talk a lot about women and stuff like that. I want to talk about anti-heroes. I want to talk about more heroes within maybe other communities like the LGBTQ communities and stuff like that. So, and more diverse. Let's talk about different races. Like, let's talk about Black heroes that we see in other colors and races that we see in movies and stuff like that.
I think an important note to make is that the villain makes the hero. If you don't have a strong, and this goes for a lot of genres, not just horror, but if you don't have a strong antagonist in a presence in terms of it, you don't have a strong protagonist, and it gets more difficult to do that. So like in terms of like especially modern horror, you'll see often the antagonist is actually culture. And so in terms of the LGBTQ community or other people of disparate minorities, things like that, like the stronger, like I think about a movie like Get Out.
I knew you were going to say that.
Like you have this strong presence of an antagonist that's in place where the protagonist gets to play against it. Or you can take it even smaller than that in terms of like other small characters in a show. If you look at the most recent season of the Upside Down.
Stranger
Things.
I almost said Strangerville.
the jock guy, and he's chasing after these two minority characters, and it's this culture of presence that was in the 80s. It was there, and so the stronger the element that's against it, the better force of heroic activity or heroism or a hero you have. And so it matters how the villain is written, and it has to be, sometimes the villain has to be a little sympathetic.
I think the story is more complicated and stronger when the villain's a little sympathetic.
Yep. And so
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I and even argue yes, I think your protagonist is always going to be only as strong as your antagonist. In almost every facet, like that's your yin and yang. If like either one of those are off in anything in any medium, yes, Destiny knows. You're gonna. It's just.
It's the logo. I couldn't figure out what was in the corner of my screen. Sorry, I'm listening.
The balance will just be off, and it will just never seem right. So, let me ask you. So let's talk about a minority hero that was for its time something shocking to a lot of audiences. Night of the Living Dead. We get Ben. Now, arguably, the main protagonist being the zombies, not a strong.
The protagonist is the zombies.
Could be, or you could argue that it's what's his name in the movie, because that's his biggest adversary in the house, that he has to deal with and fight with.
So George Romero in an interview said the antagonist in Night of the Living Dead is predominantly white culture. and the protagonist is Ben. And the whole purpose that he had in the film was to point out, here you have like all of this stuff going on. And Romero's real, like, to take it really, really deep and under like current here, something underneath everything we're talking about is horror. The changes that were taking place in the 60s and 70s went from a conservative dominated medium to a liberal dominated medium. And George Romero was a huge part of that. And this is an undercurrent to everything that we're talking about, because if you look at like the old way of doing it versus the new way of doing it, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all of these directors were like, we need to find ways to point out gaps in culture. Even Texas Chainsaw Massacre bit onto that, and all of its like mafia glory. The writers of that bit onto that undercurrent of liberalism that was taking place in the 70s. Especially coming back from Vietnam and all the messed up stuff going on. And so if you look at something like The Night of the Living Dead, I think that like, I got to go with Romero, the guy who envisioned it this way. Was like, Ben is the protagonist, he's the hero, and he dies because the culture that he was like fighting the whole movie, it just couldn't be overdone. He couldn't overcome it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And isn't that just another version of the hero's journey, right? Like the hero's journey is protagonist versus antagonist, man versus wild, man versus culture is just a logical step, right?
Yeah, especially nowadays, like as our cultures grow and meld, and we have so many cultures coming together. Because back in the day when it was just more tribes, our culture was all we had to live by. So really, man versus culture was man going against this culture, and now it's just man going out against something else.
I wish I could hear what
Sturdy had to say about all in our face.
I wish I could hear what Sturdy had to say about that, because like I think that Sturdy might have a good point there. I like he always takes up that kind of stuff on to plug his show for a second. His Thursday nights he always takes that on. Ooh, Miranda brings up a good one.
Well, actually, I want to go over Steve's first, and then let's go over Miranda, because these are all really good points. And Steve, what's going on? Thanks for joining in, man.
Hi, Steve.
He does say the one guy from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I haven't seen that. So does he mean Twisty Troy? Who is that, Carolina?
I was going to say it has to be Twisty Troy. Who else? I'm not actually sure who he's talking about.
Came out. I don't remember who he's talking about, but I remember the next.
There's a lot of guys in that movie, so it's
now Silver Bullet. He says able-bodied, but I think he means disabled. The hero is disabled. He's in a wheelchair, played by Corey Haim in the movie. That's a great point. Another hero that's it's different from what we normally see. We have disabled heroes kind of coming in. We got Night of the Creeps is one. His best friend is disabled, walks with the canes. That's I think when you add that element, whether they die in the movie or not, you can have those hero elements. I think once you have those disabled representation in movies, it adds something to that fear mechanism, because you're like, you don't want to see anybody hurt. Now you're like, when we see dogs on screen in our movie, we're like, no, please. So like, I think that works on a level with like so many other different types of people, like disabled people and things like that. Does that make sense? Am I?
Oh, you're making
vaguely.
Yeah.
Not your classic hero is kind of what.
There you go. That I guess that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Wait,
I run a podcast.
Mick.
What was the other comment you guys were referring to? I missed
Miranda's.
it. Oh, this one. Okay.
How about Knock at the Cabin? Are the four horsemen the villains because they're forcing the nice couple to kill themselves, or heroes because they're saving humanity?
We were just talking about that movie earlier. I think it's M. Night Shyamalan's best film, personally.
I believe it's pronounced Shamalama Ding Dong. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I can never remember how to say it, so that's how I always say it.
You said Unbreakable wrong.
Oh, Mick, we can have that debate later. Maybe that's a good.
I've seen this movie. I have to look at the people so I can remember it.
It's so good, and like it's a great point, because so you have a gay couple with a daughter, and these four horsemen show up, and they're like,
and one of them's Dave Bautista.
Yeah, and Dave.
That's why I remember, because I remember Dave Bautista's real name.
He does such a good job, and the Ron Weasley's in it too.
Oh,
and
that's why.
It's just a like. Oh man, it's a complex film, and it goes beyond just the initial things. And I remember Brandon and I having a debate about this, because like that movie, it would be so easy in ours, because I just like, oh fine, I'll do it. It'd just be like instant. I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, I'll do it right now. It's the second they convinced me that it was like actually going on, I'd be like, yeah, okay, Brandon and the dog get to go, sure. Like it would be there would be no conflict, but the conflict that's present in it is so good, because they don't believe the four horsemen, even though, so are they the good guys because they're trying to save the world, or are they the bad guys because they're trying to kill this couple? Well, not kill them, actually, get them to kill themselves, really.
Yeah.
Like it takes on the LGBTQ, the difference of what a modern hero is, and actually transcends, in my opinion, what horror is completely, to something else that is
Thriller,
almost like just like very at our core rudimentary of what makes us people, and that's what the best horror does.
I was gonna say, isn't that what horror does? Is tries to get to our baser
good
instincts?
horror, good
Yes.
horror.
Well, I would argue that they were anti-heroes. They were the heroes that came in, and
That seems like a cop-out. I mean, you're not wrong.
That's a real thing.
It is, and you're not wrong. That is by definition the anti-hero, but it also just feels like we don't really know. Figure it out for yourself. They're anti-heroes.
But even in the hero's journey, the anti-hero has to exist. You know, the Han Solos have to exist.
My favorite anti-hero is Hannibal Lecter. So
he is on the script. Good job bringing back.
I know my job.
Like, seriously, is he?
Yes.
I wasn't even going to.
There's a whole section of
I was looking at my notes.
It's number 6 bullet point 2.
Oh, come on, Mick!
I want to follow.
I wrote that myself. I wrote it in my notes myself.
I wrote it myself too in the script.
I would argue, based on this bullet point, I'd argue that Hannibal Lecter is more of an anti-hero than Norman Bates was.
I don't think Norman Bates is an anti-hero.
I don't think
Norman Bates is straight up a psychopath. Like there's nothing else.
Like,
that's probably not.
I didn't
argue it because he's
sociopath.
No, argue that he's an anti-hero because he's put upon, and everything he does is a reaction. But if you watch all 3 films, I'm not even going to mention the 4th one, but if you watch all 3 films, he transforms into an actual villain. In the first one, it could be argued he has anti-hero characteristics. By the 3rd one, the dude is straight up just a killer. And
all right. If that's the case, then in the first one, he's the anti-hero and the villain is lack of mental health awareness.
Or
because none of it would have happened if he'd had any kind of mental health care.
The most unfortunate character is the lady in the second one who reminds him of his mother and tries to tell him what to do. And that poor old lady just wants to help him get dinner, and he straight up, I think he hits her with a shovel.
We could also argue, if we're going the Norman Bates route and and let's just go off the first one for now.
Last words.
And knowing the background, we could also argue that Norman Bates is neither a hero or a villain, but a victim of circumstance and created his world. Yeah, and his world was created for him. So if that world was created for him and he became a different person, he became his mother, she is in fact the villain.
So he became the villain by becoming her.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's deep. So he's the final girl until he becomes his mother.
Is it a predecessor to modern concepts of gender, and was Alfred Hitchcock in the forefront of what things are, and really like what they called gender dysphoria at the time, that Norman Bates was our truly first transgender horror character? And the problem was not his mother, but a lack of acceptance on the part of culture.
No, I think he was just horribly traumatized and had no way to deal with it. And that was not the case.
Listen.
But he's a special case because Alfred Hitchcock was kind of like next level for that era, I think. Yeah.
The gun ironically in, and this is way too philosophical and highbrow conversation for me.
You've got to stop taking them before the show,
I'm
man.
kidding.
Take them after the show.
I take them after the shows. I'm kidding. I have a whole sip here. I'm not going to take a gummy before I.
Seriousness to go with popcorn and pints or anything like that. Like that's why I prefer beer for horror conversations. They elevate the conversation. They keep you like
human blood. It's perfect.
Human blood. It's perfect.
That's why it's not see-through. Don't worry about it.
I love it. I love it.
So ironically, the first horror movie I ever saw was The Birds. That was my introduction to horror movies.
Is that movie a horror movie? Is that movie a horror movie?
I think it was. I was 6 years old. Like I should not have been watching that movie.
If that movie's a horror movie, Twister is a horror movie. Like
oh my god, what was the other one with the worms?
Nature is the antagonist in that film. Nature is the antagonist. We rewatched it last year when I bought the Alfred Hitchcock collection. I think The Birds is a bad movie. I think it's boring. And I don't care how blasphemous it is to say on a horror conversation podcast, The Birds is boring. It's a bad film. And I'll stand and die on that hill.
Okay.
I think The Birds is good introduction horror for kids.
For a 6-year-old, it was fucking terrifying. Sorry, am I allowed to say that? It's terrifying. Sorry. I moved on from that, obviously.
God.
What?
Watch your fucking mouth.
I didn't say anything.
My first one was Nightmare on Elm Street when I was 5.
Wait, which one was
fair
yours?
enough.
Nightmare.
Well, I mean, but we're horror fans. We're built different.
Yeah.
But like
I also
some kids you can't do that to.
Yeah.
And actually, Dan, no offense, most kids you can't do that to. Majority of children.
I actually think it was brilliant. I think here's the thing: it taught me the difference between fantasy and reality. And
that's it. That's it. That's the thing.
It taught you that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of kids out there who don't get that off their first, especially at 5.
They get nightmares.
Yeah, they get nightmares. And they live with that. You have a different type of brain, and that's a credit. That's a good thing. You're a smart guy. And I'm not saying that kids are stupid. They are because they're kids. But like, you know what
Fun fact.
This isn't even actually a gummy talking. This is actually me. Can you believe this? What is going on? It's like I talk to you two and I'm stupider by osmosis.
Aww.
You're still so smart. Like, I get all the time.
I know. Don't worry, Mick Blueberry.
We're trying to figure out the rest.
Most men feel that way when they talk to me. Fun fact, I wrote a book, it's right back there, about children and how they stop nightmares. Fun fact that I wrote.
I bought that book for my child.
I know. It's a really cute picture of your adorable child reading it. Thank you for that.
Yes.
But anyway.
For me was just that I would team up with like Freddy in dreams.
That's badass.
To take out
That's amazing.
Like I remember writing this in journals when I was like 6 and 7 years old to take out like Skeletor and stuff like that. Like he was like
things that might have scared you like fought them with Freddy.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's kind of what this is, honestly. It's a little
and that's the funny thing. I did, and I love how you said that because I did that too with my dreams. But I did it like I was a big Ghostbusters fan or Ninja Turtles, and I would team up with them to fight like Freddy, of all people. Because he did scare me as like a 5-year-old. Like I was.
He should like that's if I hadn't sat there with my mom and watched that, who knows? I don't know. But it was because she was right there. She was like, "He's not real. That's an actor," and like, it just went a long way. That's all.
So I watched The Birds with the babysitter.
Maybe I'm not as well adjusted as I think I am.
Hey, I'm putting out there just so everybody knows if you guys are watching right now, and it will be in the description. The Amazon link for Destiny's book is up on the comments, but it will also be in the description so you can pick up a copy. You should for your kids today.
This is not supposed to be about me. This is supposed to be about Carolina Fear Fest, but I have nothing exciting to talk about yet. So that's a little thing that I did.
Well, let's announce next year's guest.
I can't, but I know who they are, and I will tell you later, but I can't yet. Actually, Stephanie.
Well, we can announce one.
As far as I know, I am not permitted to announce any guests.
Actually, I talked to Stephanie about it, and we can announce the first one.
Okay, go for it.
All right. Without further ado, in 2024 Carolina Fear Fest, you better be down at Raleigh at the North Carolina State Fairgrounds at the Jim Graham Building, because we are going to have amazing horror-filled fun with awesome horror movie-filled guests, with horror movie-filled people, So come down
And books
and
and
see
games.
us. And our first guest announcement is yours truly, host of the Scene Snobs Podcast and Horror Conversations.
I thought I'm so mad at you right now. I thought we were legit like allowed to say somebody's name.
Announcement here.
That was so much drum roll for
if Mick
nothing.
was here right now, he'd get like one of those like dick taps where it's like,
oh, come on. At least act excited so they seem excited.
I love seeing you. I get to see you hopefully in September, maybe. We'll figure
You're
that out.
not
But
the ones I'm trying to excite with this.
yeah, I know. I know real things.
For
Nick,
anybody,
I
so
thought we were allowed
what
to...
I got.
So anyway, the first horror movie I watched was The Birds, and then I evolved quickly into CSI and being completely obsessed. That's fair. That's
Official media partners of Carolina Fear Fest. Oh.
Anyway, I was numb to horror at an early age, and we should go back to our topic.
I didn't. So, I mean, we're getting in a tight
past
time
time.
right now, Nick. We probably should start wrapping it up.
It was a terrible segue. I've been waiting to say that for so long, and you took 10 minutes to make your fake announcement. So,
well, guess who's not my hero tonight?
This guy.
Like, in all seriousness, like, so the biggest thing is, I think horror does come down to heroes and villains. I think for me, I know, like, Destiny brought up a really good point about modern horror in terms of people taking it in a lot of different direction and trying to transform it. But like for me, and Mick and I have talked about this quite a bit before, both on his podcast and on other things. Like, modern horror doesn't speak to me a lot, and I think unless it's having callbacks to the 80s and 90s. And I think a huge part is they have like abandoned those tropes to embrace postmodernism. And I think that heroes and villains are important to horror. And I think the stronger your hero is, the stronger your villain is, the better the story is.
I think I agree with you, but I think it's because horror movies with protagonists of men our age that we can identify with are few and far between. They've existed in the past. We have the Shinings and things like that. So we can identify with that stuff. But it's hard to identify with really the things that are coming out today. Now, you can watch movies like Insidious, and like I can identify with Patrick Wilson's character from the fatherly aspect, and I'm sure you can identify from being the man aspect and being a son growing up, having like family secrets and things like that. So like, but that's a thin character that we can compare ourselves to.
It's different
within our lives, so it's not really something we can latch on to, so yeah, I think that is a missing component in horror today, whereas back in the day, especially the 70s, it seemed like there was a lot of those. Who do we compare ourselves the most to in Jaws?
Quint.
Fucking everybody, because they were all in their fucking 40s in that movie.
Now, how would you wrap it up, Destiny? What would you say, like, to bring everything to a close?
I think it's really interesting to think about the hero versus the final girl. Okay. And I kind of like that more modern movies, not just horror movies, but especially horror movies, are having so much more gray area as far as like the good and the evil. I mean, obviously there's movies like Insidious where it's very clearly defined, but like Midsommar, like we mentioned, has no strict definitions of necessarily, like, we all had different opinions on
Hereditary. We didn't even mention Hereditary.
Exactly. Man. So like, I kind of like that. I like the ones that make you think, and I, for some reason, always end up on the side of the demons. I wonder why. I wonder why that is.
You love that. I mean, listen, overall, when we're talking about heroes in horror movies and things like that, there's plenty we can go back and talk about. And I know, like when we were initially talking about this, especially you and I, Des, we were wondering, like, where's this going to go? We're just kind of throwing out names. But as we've seen,
I was like, you're wrong.
Yeah, I know.
To be fair, you weren't wrong.
I pick the topics because she's like, I don't. What the hell am I going to talk about? But I'm going to keep doing it, and I can't wait. because I know she's going to have great conversations with it.
We did. I still technically did not name a single horror hero person this entire conversation. I just challenged everything you said, but it turned out to a really good conversation, so that's fine.
And
Also, the villain of this podcast is Mick for that totally fake lead up to a guest that was not announced. We knew you were going to be there. You love us, and we put a spell on you. You have to come back.
Listen, I'll be signing autographs. They'll be free. There's no one going to pay for that shit.
I just want to volunteer, like, just so Mick doesn't have to be double booked next year. I will moderate whatever Q&A sessions you guys need. I love that.
Absolutely. You're on the list already.
I'd love to do that. Yeah. Like, I don't mind that. And then Nick doesn't have to be in 2 rooms at the same time.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if he hadn't left early, he would have only had to be in one room at a time, and we wouldn't have found replacements.
Steven, I will take as many selfies as you'd like. I'm even going to dress up the booth next year. It's going to be great.
Let me know if you need help with that, by the way.
I do.
I know you do. That's why I'm telling you I'm going to help you with it.
Great sign to share. I like the sign.
We're going to have some fun stuff. Oh, no, we're going to have the sign. We're going to have some fun stuff. I have some
you have a lit sign.
Because now I know we're welcome back. There was a time, there was like 3 years where it was like, I didn't know until like January or February that we're welcome back.
That's because we didn't know, but now we're Carolina Fear Fest.
But now I know a year in advance. So
yeah.
I can plan a year in advance. Like I'll get my costume ready. And I didn't, first of all, I'm going back real quick. I know I'm supposed to be ending this, but I don't care.
We are well over time.
It's not like I was like, hey guys, peace out. It's awesome. I love this. This is fun. I'm going to roll. I was sick. I was very sick. All right.
I know.
Terribly, terribly sick. And I'm going to,
it's not my fault.
No,
I didn't mean to.
Fault, and I would never blame you.
I mean, sometimes
after the party Saturday night, I was surprised more people weren't sick.
Oh, you mean because of the human alcohol?
Yeah.
Right. Gotcha.
But when I left at midnight, because I had to drive all the way back to my hotel, which is further for me than most of you guys. Like, when I left at midnight, I was like, wow, people are
Ubering, hopefully
getting tuned up, and I was like, I gotta go, because otherwise, like, if I stick around, I'm gonna have to Uber all the way back to my hotel, and that'd be expensive Uber.
So fun story. My purse, my wallet, my car keys, and my phone were in a box under the table, and someone decided to go ahead and pack up the boxes under the table. So I had to go out to their car and get my stuff out of the very creepy parking garage.
That was in order to leave. Parking garage.
Mm-hmm. It was a horror movie waiting to happen.
Oh my God.
Normally I would love, but also I have to go get all of the things that take me places and also tell people where I am out of somebody's car. And then I was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to go home. We cleaned up. We dealt with the people at the venue. Like, I'm going to go back to the hotel and get ready for tomorrow. So yeah, I packed up Derek, my corpse boyfriend, and threw him in the car, and I left. So I did not stay till midnight.
Yeah, there's no way I was staying till midnight. There's dude, the fact that you guys got me there as long as I did, it was an awesome party.
It was so good.
Looking at all of that amazing food and drink and that I couldn't touch because I was sick for completely different reasons, had nothing to do with anything in the convention.
Yeah.
And I hated the fact that I could not just enjoy it because I was still having a really good time hosting the games.
And you were doing such a good job.
Oh, dude, it took everything, every ounce of strength I had to get off of those steps and just pull it off. And I don't know how I did it, but I had such a good time doing it, and I love it.
Well,
I can't wait.
Mary helped a lot. Mary was really supportive.
Mary was great, yes. For the record, we appreciated you boot and rallying, hopefully without the boot. Yeah, it was a good party. It was a good time. I'm surprised you made it this many years without having a negative reaction to the demon energy surrounding you all the time. So
I love the demon
props for that.
But I want to say thank you guys. Dan, thank you for joining in. Destiny, it is always a pleasure hosting with you. Dan, you're always welcome back. I love having you.
And I love, I that was me with 15 minutes of prep. So
okay, so I'll give you next. You want next month's topic now?
You guys would be like, will this guy just shut up? Like, you probably should only give me like 15 minutes. You saw what happened when Tim and I did the what was that? What was the show we did where we argued about the movie, Mick?
That sounds like every show.
Yeah, it
No,
like
it was like Versus or whatever.
Our show Real Combat.
Yeah, Real Combat. And Tim and I showed up with, and we compared afterwards. We each had 6 pages worth of notes.
Oh no!
And well, we didn't
you guys realize the show was supposed to be an hour, right?
Because I don't think you ever did that. I want to get you and Destiny on that one because it used to be. And we'll still do this format of it, but it's going to change a little bit. It's REEL combat.
Yeah.
So 2 contestants come on and you debate. It used to be you debate which movie I should watch. You each pick a movie for me to watch, and then you debate why I should watch your movie in 3 rounds. And we'll still do that format, but now I'm going to open it up a little bit and change it down a little bit and pick certain topics for people too. So like you're going to debate this movie topic versus this movie topic, or why, or this versus this. You know,
I love it, man. It was a great competition. Like all these horror conversations are great, man. Like this is a genre that transcends other genres. This and science fiction are the Gestalt genres, right? Like
Doctor Who is horror. Don't prove me wrong.
I want to say that, like I told Mick, I need a show where it's just like piss Mick off. And it's just how quickly I can piss Mick off.
No, that'd be
There's just
too
like
easy.
a timer in the corner. Because I think I could get him in under 60 seconds.
I get to hit the button. I'll play, but I get to hit the button.
Well, Sturdy keeps trying to talk me into doing a Saturday night show called Mick at Night.
You can just talk about like 90s TV shows all the time.
It's random. Oh my God, you didn't hear about the next podcast for the Patreon?
I don't
I
know these things.
Oh my God.
But also you should talk about Alex Mack.
We're doing the Totally Tubular podcast, 80s and 90s rewatch show. So we're just going to watch random 80s and 90s movies and TV shows and just talk about them. But no, the Mick at Night one was just random shit on a Saturday night. And it's just craziness. Like whatever, think like Chris Gethard type show.
Embrace the absurdity.
Embrace. Yep. There you go.
You should have been a Gisher.
A what?
So it was this scavenger hunt that was hosted by Misha Collins of the show Supernatural. I think I've told you about it before. I used to play it. It ended last year. Everybody was devastated. I'm still not over it. But you should have been one because absurdity is like the name of the game. I once drove a John Deere tractor dressed as a geisha. Yeah, it was a long
I would
time
give
ago.
anything to see that.
I drove my riding lawnmower through town because they wanted to charge me $1,000 to deliver it.
One time I was Edgar Allan Poe, but with chickens.
That is my favorite thing.
I feel like
I'll send you the picture.
I want to see that.
I look pretty cute. The
love
chickens were nice. Anyway,
all right, everybody. I want to say thank you, guys. We will be back next month. We're going to be talking about animal horror films. That's right. We're going to be talking about animals and horror.
Is this because of Cocaine Bear?
I mean, we will be. I mean, that's
birds.
Fits.
Oh, or the birds. Yeah, I guess you could say that too.
You know, you did kind of propel it with that, but there's plenty of other animals in horror. I mean, we started with Jaws, we talked about the birds, and it's August and there's animals out. It's gonna be fun. So let's talk about
Shark Week.
Yeah, we're gonna love it. So we'll be back next month. You guys make sure to check it out. Check out the Scene Snobs Podcast. Check out Carolina Fear Fest. Make sure you are staying up to date by following them everywhere at Carolina Fear Fest, because we're gonna announce real awesome guests soon, not just me. We're going to announce a lot more, so to keep up to date with it, make sure to check out Destiny's book. There's all the links down in the description below. I want to say appreciate you guys watching. Thank you to Destiny. Thank you to Matt. Thank you to Dan. Losing my mind.
His name is Master Shake.
Yeah, I know, you got me confused. I was going to say Master Shake, and then I said and I meant to say Dan. I was going to change it halfway through, and I said Matt. And now I feel like
it should be Matt if you're gonna mix Master Shake and Dan.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Matt.
That's all that matters.
All right.
You have your dinner. It's in a bottle right in front of you. You're good.